So in this video, we are going to, by the end of it, have written some very simple code that is actually going to be able to say something to the screen, proving that our development environment works out and that we are able to compile C++ code. So let's get on with it. So we left a couple of things downloading before all the chit-chat. One of those was Visual Studio. So we started Visual Studio first, and I'm hoping that it's downloaded for you now. Depends entirely how fast your broadband is, of course. So here we are. I'm going to launch Visual Studio for the first time. Now, if you're on a Mac and you're saying, what's Visual Studio? What's he talking about? Well, then I'm going to cover Xcode at the end of this video again for you. So here we go. This is the website. We don't really need to see the website. So there we are, Visual Studio. It's just doing some stuff. Let it do some stuff. Okay, let it get going. Now, the flag I talked about, the update flag, is up here. There are 5 notifications. It's definitely worth doing any updates straight away. So these types of updates, unless you recognize, now I've told you need to do it, you can just clear those. But if there are any major updates to the system, then you need to do that, any Visual Studio updates themselves. So what is Visual Studio? It's a integrated development environment. It helps you write code. And this is going to be an industry standard tool we're using here. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty heavyweight tool, but it's very powerful. It's very customizable. And all we want to do here is kind of make sure that it works and that we can customize and we can compile. Compiling means turning your code into something the computer can run. If you see things like this, little errors, then this is talking about you being logged in to your Microsoft account. You don't have to do it at first, but sooner or later it's going to ask you to log in to your account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And if you do see it asking you, just do sign in with a Microsoft account when you're first asked to do it. And once you're signed in, you'll be able to see your name up here and the nags will go away. So let's go ahead and make our own new project. Now, once we're using Unreal, then Unreal will actually create our projects and our solutions for us. But for now, let's get a basic familiarity with Visual Studio. So new project. And then I want you to go down to Visual C++ here in your list. So Visual C++, and then Win32 console application.
Sam here with a quick update for later versions of Visual Studio. You will see that this is no longer called Win32 console application, but rather Windows console application instead.
Now, where are you going to save this? Well, it's a very trivial application, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to call it Hello World. What I'm saying is that we don't really need to come back to this later. This is going to be very, very simple. We're just testing things work. So just click Next and Finish. Don't worry about what any of that stuff means. It could take a lifetime to learn what all this means. We just need to make sure that our Visual Studio is going to compile C++ code before we get Unreal all set up and installed. So here we go. This is C++.
If you're worried that your code doesn't look like this, then you're probably using a newer version of Visual Studio. So just wait till the end of Ben's explanation and I will show you the differences in newer versions.
So what do we have here? At the top, we have green stuff that starts with a // These are comments. They're completely ignored by the computer. They're there to help you, and we'll be talking in the course a lot about how to use comments. But for now, we don't need anything there. Hash includes. They allow the code to access other code in simple terms, and we are going to need one of those to make sure that we're able to write to the console. And what I want you to do is I want you to write hash include.
So let me just take a second and interrupt Ben there, because I want to show you what's different in newer versions of Visual Studio. The C++ file that you'll have generated will look different, and that might be confusing at first. So Ben is going to go ahead and add line 5 and line 9, which are automatically there for you in this default file. So you won't need to do that, but you can watch through the video and see why he's doing it in his explanation of that. But otherwise, you can see all the green stuff here is still comments like Ben described. There are some useful tips in these comments now. It's not just pro forma stuff. You can actually read through, particularly these comments from line 12 to line 21, are useful information for you that you might want to read at the end of this lecture. Just leave them in the meantime. But otherwise, it is very much the same. You'll notice this include is different now. That doesn't matter. You don't need to worry too much about why that's different, but it will be, and that's normal. So I'll put you back in Ben's hands, and you can now see how that even though your code is different, why it's working and what to do with it.
and then left chevron. Now when you do that, it's going to load up a list of all the things that are available in the standard directories that Visual Studio is looking for. And what I'm looking for is something called file IOStream, IOSTREAM. And you see how if you start typing it and then hit the return key, it'll actually fill it in for you. That reduces errors and increases your coding speed. So hash include IOStream, that's awesome. Then what I want you to do is come down to line 9 and make sure you're indented one tab. If you do what I just did, which is select at the end of line 8 and hit return, you will be selected in one tab, but please use a tab and not 4 spaces. So now that we have access to IOStream, within there's something called std, which is a namespace, it's basically a grouping of bits of code. : lets us go inside that. And then we have something called cout. So I want you to go std : cout space, left chevron, and we'll explain a little later in the course what that means. For now, we're just trying to test that the system works. And then it's going to be hello world. I'm going to put an exclamation and then a \n. Now look, when you write code, you have to be very precise. It's very important that it looks exactly like this, and then on the end we've got a semicolon. On the end of all lines there's a semicolon. In fact, in C++, just like in C#, that's the only way the compiler knows that you mean that your statement has finished. Okay, so that's what I want you to write. And when you've written that, go to debug and then start without debugging, or Control F5, and see what happens. Would you like to build it? Yes. And look what pops up. A Windows application, or a Windows console application that says hello world. Press any key to continue. And when we do, it just exits.
This step's also very much the same in newer versions of Visual Studio, except you'll see that the end line looks slightly different here. Don't worry about that, that's just cosmetic, and actually your stuff is working exactly the same, so really that shouldn't be worrying you. The important bit is that it says hello world up here.
So congratulations, if you've got this far, you have your computer with a industry strength integrated development environment up and running. You're able to compile code, which means turn your text into something the computer can actually run, ultimately ones and noughts. And that is all working fantastically. So good job with that. You'll understand code a lot better as we go through the course, but you are set up and ready. We're going to look at the Unreal Editor next. And if you're on a Mac, PC, as you probably are watching this far into this video, just skip the next one. It's about Xcode. See you soon.